Good morning, team. I hope you are all well, and I hope that you had a lovely weekend. We're going to finish up remote learning this week by looking at question 5 from our language paper 1 responses. Could you please make sure that you have your language paper 1 response as well as your marked copy that I sent you via email? And for those of you that didn't complete the language paper 1 responses, there is a model version on Show My Homework for you to use, as well as a marked model version. So make sure you have those open. Pause the video and make sure you have those two things in front of you now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you've got that in front of you and you are ready to write down the title, date, and learning objective. Pause the video and press play when you have those things written down, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you're ready to do the do now. Today, I would like you to complete these tasks based on this image. This is good practice for responding to an image in question 5, and it's really good practice also for the different sentence types that I expect you to use and the different skills that I expect you to show during your question 5 response. So pause the video now and complete these tasks based on this image. Press play when you have that done. Okay, if you're back, that means your do now is complete, and I will check those sentences when you submit your work, as there's going to be loads of different options. I can't give one correct answer, so I will check those when you submit. So as you can see by the title today, we're going to look at vocabulary and our use of vocabulary in our question 5 response. Before we get into that, let's remind ourselves of the question 5 that we approached in our assessment. It says, your local library is running a creative writing competition. The best entries will be published in a booklet of creative writing. Either write a description of a mysterious place, as suggested by this picture, or write a story about an event that cannot be explained. So a lot of you chose to answer this one, and that was really clear in your descriptions of the arch and the gates and the trees and things like that. Some of you also decided to write a story about an event that cannot be explained. The issue with this one is that we went way too unrealistic with the event. I think I read things about zombies. I think I read things about spiders. That's not realistic, and that's not what you need to be writing in your change and challenge response. Your change and challenge paragraph as part of your response. In my opinion, I always personally prefer to use an image, as it gives you a basis to describe the things that you see. But we're going to look at a couple of examples of responses for both of these questions as we go through the week. So I want to also introduce you to the mark scheme, because this is worth 40 marks, and we need to be aware of what the examiner is expecting of us, so we know what we need to include to hit those 40 marks. So you have 24 marks available for content and organisation. That's separated here. And then there are different levels, just like any of the other papers, literature or language is separated into levels. At the moment, a lot of us are at a lower level 3, which is down there. So I've decided to put the upper level 3 and the lower level 4 on the screen, because these are ultimately the levels that we are going to be aiming for now. So we have for content register is consistently matched to audience. So is it appropriate? It's consistently matched to a purpose. So have you understood that narrative is different to descriptive writing? And is your writing matched to that? Increasingly sophisticated vocabulary and phrasing chosen for effect with a range of successful linguistic devices. Linguistic devices being similes, metaphors, personification, hyperbole, pathetic fallacy, all of these things. Then we have organisation, so how we organise the content and the ideas. So effective use of structural features, those things like discourse markers, paragraphs, for example. Writing is engaging using a range of clear and connected ideas. So that's about what we include, and the notion that our ideas need to be connected. It's not just 4 separate paragraphs, the paragraphs are blended together. Coherent paragraphs with integrated discourse markers. And then when you look at the lower level 4, which is 1 up, the expectations are that you use the same skills but better. So, for example, register is consistently matched becomes register is convincingly matched. Same with purpose, and increasingly sophisticated becomes extensive vocabulary, and conscious crafting of linguistic devices. So again, it's the same skills, but just the expectation of how often and how successfully you use those skills is enhanced. That's where you can get the 24 marks for content and organisation. And then we have the SPAG mark. And SPAG is worth 16, so the top level is level 4, and again it's split into levels all the way down. A lot of us are kind of into this level 3 band, so I've put these 2 on the screen now for us to aim for. So for SPAG, its sentence demarcation is mostly secure and mostly accurate, so this is our ability to use commas and full stops to separate sentences. Range of punctuation is used mostly with success, so that's use of commas, exclamation marks, question marks, semicolons, colons, brackets, dashes, hyphens, all of those things, and I am going to teach you those in detail. But for now, I would rather we focus on our ability to use simple punctuation accurately before we can use a range of punctuation accurately. Uses a variety of sentence forms for effects. We're going to look at that this week as well, but that's our compound, complex, simple sentences. Uses standard English appropriately with mostly controlled grammatical structures. So that is our grammar. Do all of our sentences have nouns and verbs? Are we using the correct tenses during our sentences? Is there no slang? Then we have genuinely accurate spelling, including complex and irregular words, and then increasingly sophisticated use of vocabulary. And then again, when you go up to level 4, it's the same skills but more advanced. So, for example, increasingly sophisticated use of vocabulary becomes extensive and ambitious use of vocab. Speaking of vocab, that is our focus of today's lesson, and it's particularly important because we are marked for it in SPAG, and we are also marked for it in content. So it's important that our vocabulary is sophisticated and ambitious so we can pick up the marks for that skill in both our SPAG and our content and organisation mark. So how do we do this? So we need to use a variety of vocabulary, and it's for the purpose of enhancing our descriptions, making our descriptions better, more interesting, more exciting. So I'm going to look at a couple of responses that were good, but some of the vocabulary could definitely be pushed. So this one here, it was a mild autumn night, silence surrounded the dark, eerie cemetery. The feeling of grief pushed away any visitors who dared come close to the gates. The skies were as still as a statue, not a cloud could be seen in the dark skies. The great gate in the brick archway provided the ultimate obstacle to any undecided visitors. Beyond lay hundreds of graves that provide the only memory of deceased people. About to enter, the security guard who had no choice but experienced these unwanted feelings every night. So there's some nice vocab here. I quite like the use of the word eerie. I also like the word undecided, deceased. There's some nice vocab in there. But there's definitely room for more sophisticated vocabulary. And in this example, suddenly the mysterious fog arose and started wandering around. The fluffy white clouds turned to a smoke grey as if a storm was about to brew. The lingering fog appeared as a miasma waiting for its prey. At the same time, the silent wind rushed through the forest. The sturdy and ancient archway added to the uneasiness of the area. The open metallic gate made of steel. The withered trees overlooked the forest like its guardian. For a while the man stared at the archway in awe and fear. Again, some interesting vocab here. I quite like the use of the word awe. Uneasiness is nice. This sentence is great. The idea of lingering, fog, miasma. There's some excellent vocab in there, but that doesn't mean that it can't be more sophisticated. So, previously we've been introduced to sensory vocab, and we completed this table. Words to describe things in the 5 senses. Now, there are hundreds and hundreds of sensory vocab that we could use. This is kind of the basics. And interestingly, not many of us were using sensory vocab to describe the image or our story. It's particularly interesting because a lot of us do talk a lot about kind of sound or how things feel and how things look. So it's important that we utilize those opportunities to include sensory vocab. Now, another expectation I have is to use colour vocabulary. Now, this document is amazing. It has loads and loads of different words for loads of different colours. Obviously, red, orange, yellow, and so on. There's a copy of this on Show My Homework for you to open and save. It's a really, really good document. I will also print it out for you when you get back to school, and we'll have that in our folders to refer back to. So there are an abundance of ways to describe loads of different colours, and it's really important that we embed these and use these for impact within our writing. So we're going to practice doing this now. So I'm going to flash up 5 sentences on the screen, and you're going to copy them down, and you're going to add a piece of sensory or colour vocabulary to each. Like I said, the colour vocab and the sensory vocab will be on a document in Show My Homework. Alternatively, you do have a sensory vocabulary table down from the previous lesson, so you can always flick back to that if you would prefer. There's also some sentences on the sensory vocabulary lesson that you copy down and used, so it might be useful to refer back to those for some inspiration about how to use sensory vocab. So here are 5 sentences. Copy them down and add 1 piece of either sensory or colour vocabulary to each of them. Pause the video and complete that task now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you've copied these sentences, and each one should now include a piece of sensory or colour vocabulary. And you should already be starting to get a feel for how sensory and colour vocab can enhance writing. Okay, now what I would like you to do is copy the sentences, but you're going to upgrade a piece of sensory or colour vocab. So these sentences talk about things that are seen, heard, tasted, felt, whatever, and they are good sentences, but we can upgrade them so that they include a more sophisticated word for the sense or a more sophisticated word for the colour. Pause the video and complete that task now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you now have 10 sentences that use sensory and colour vocabulary effectively, and I will check those when you submit your work. So we can do it in sentence form, but how do we do it in our paragraphs? So have a look at this example on the screen. Let's read through it together. The big emerald green palm tree had become brittle over the years as people climbed on it. However, it was still standing and created a navy shadow on the shimmering sapphire blue ocean. A tall man with buttery tanned skin lay on his silky hammock as his wife sipped on a zesty smoothie from a coral-coloured straw. The man's smoke-grey glasses became blurry as his wife playfully splashed water into his cherry-red, burnt face. What is the problem with this paragraph? In terms of vocabulary, what is the problem with this paragraph? Have a think for a second. Okay, the problem with this paragraph is that it overuses sensory and colour vocabulary. So we have emerald green, brittle, navy, shimmering, sapphire blue, buttery tan skin, silky, zesty, coral coloured, smoke grey, blurry, cherry red. There are too many pieces of vocabulary in here. It's almost like when someone writes an essay and they just Google other words for, and then they just put them in, and it just doesn't make sense and it just feels unnatural. This is why in the previous task I only asked you to include one piece of sensory or colour vocabulary, because overusing it isn't appropriate. You have to be quite subtle with how you use it, and you have to use it in opportunities where it can be most impactful. Okay, so how do I use my sensory and colour vocabulary throughout my paragraphs to enhance my descriptions? I'm going to show you how I would do it using a zoom out checklist to write a zoom out paragraph. This paragraph is going to be based on the image in the Do Now, which seems to be some kind of New Year's Eve celebrations in central London. So I'm going to use that image as my inspiration. You don't need to write anything down for this. You just need to watch how I include different vocabulary throughout. You need to listen to how I kind of talk myself through the process, because you're going to need to mimic those thought processes when you are writing as well to ensure that you're using vocabulary for impact. So let me just end my slideshow and let me just add in a text box. I thought I added one, but I didn't. Let me add that in. All right, so my first step is to describe the mood of the scene using personification and an interesting verb. Remember, personification is giving a non-human thing a human quality. So I imagine that everyone's pretty excited that, there's fireworks blasting through the sky. I can imagine everyone's pretty excited to celebrate New Year's. So I'm going to write, as the fireworks blasted into the sky. I'm going to write elation. I'm going to say elation. I'm not going to say spread. I was going to say spread, but I don't actually like that. I'm going to elation dashed through the crowd of people. So the personification of the elation dashing. And now at this point, I'd ask myself, can I include any sensory vocab or colour vocab here? And I think I could by describing the sky as onyx black. So I'm adding that in there. Right, my next step is to describe the weather times 3 once using a simile. So 3 features of the weather. I'm going to do the moon, the stars, and wait, did the stars count as weather and the moon? I guess. I mean, you describe the sun as part of the weather, so we're going to use the moon as well. My checklist, my rules, that's what we're going for. And then I'm also going to do the temperature as well. So first we'll do the moon. The moon was reflecting on the surface of the river, because I can imagine it's near the River Thames. And I'm going to add creating interesting patterns as it rippled in the gentle breeze. When you blow on a surface of water and it ripples. That's what I'm kind of trying to get at here. So again, I'd ask myself, can I include sensory or colour vocabulary? I think I can. I think I could describe the moon as iridescent, that kind of pearl kind of effect on the moon. Okay, now I'm going to describe the stars, and I'm going to write millions of shimmering stars shone up above. It's a nice simple sentence. Also, in that simple sentence, I just realised that I've used sensory vocab with shimmering, and I've also used alliteration there as well, which was not on purpose, but there you go. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the temperature. So I kind of want to create this idea that it's freezing cold, but because there's so many people kind of together, it almost feels like everyone's giving you a warm hug, and it makes it feel warmer. So I'm going to write, although it was freezing cold, the temperature felt like it was rising as if hundreds of friends, like it was rising in the crowd, as if hundreds of friends were giving you a warm hug. Right, so I've described the weather times 3. Now I need to describe 3 main items, one of which is going to form my zoom in paragraph. So I think I'm going to do a red London bus, the London Eye, and the clock. And I think I'll probably zoom in on the clock a little bit later. So let's do the bus. So I'm going to say a big red bus had parked on the side of the busy streets to enjoy the much anticipated firework display. So, I didn't even check if this sentence needed sensory or colour vocabulary. I don't think it does. There's nothing like physically I'm describing, and I'm describing the cold, so I think that's fine. This sentence, big red bus, I can describe the bus as garnet red. Big garnet red bus. Actually, I want to say like a maybe a gigantic garnet red bus. That sounds better. Perfect. And then I want to do the London Eye. So I'm going to start with in the distance. The top of the London Eye. I need to capitalise that because it's a name of a thing. I'm going to write curiously peaked over the buildings. That's also personification there. Look at me. I'm on fire. As if it was also trying to get a glimpse of the celebrations. And that's quite nice because I've had both the bus and the London Eye trying to get involved with the celebrations, which creates quite a nice kind of link of ideas. And then finally, I'm going to look at the clock. So I'm going to start with every second because a clock ticks every second. And because I'm going to do it in my zoom in, I want to kind of make the description as kind of enhanced as possible here, so I can use that idea later. So I'm going to write every second the large snow white clock ticked to warn the public that the countdown was about to begin. And my colour vocab there is snow white. Okay, and then finally I need to talk about a character's movement towards one of the main items. That's obviously going to be my zoom in, so it's going to be the clock, and I'm going to talk about like a child who's really excited and he like runs away from his parents. I'm going to write one child who was particularly keen to get as close to the clock as possible, began to push his way through the sea of people. All right, so now I've done every kind of item in the checklist. I'm just going to check that I've used 3 fronted adverbials. I've got 1, I've got 2, and I'm missing one. I'm going to add one up here. Thousands of miles away, comma, the iridescent moon, that's fine. Okay, now let's check my colour and sensory vocabulary in this paragraph. So we have onyx black, iridescent, shimmering, garnet red, snow white. That's about it, really. that's enough for this paragraph. So as you can see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this one paragraph. I haven't included a piece in every single sentence, and that's what makes this paragraph good. All right, so now it is your turn. You're going to go through your question 5 response, and you're going to add 5 pieces of sensory vocab and 5 pieces of colour vocabulary. So that's 10 in total. I don't mind how you spread them out. If you want to use kind of like 2 in paragraph, 2 in one paragraph, 3 in another paragraph, 3 in another paragraph, doesn't matter, as long as there are 10 in total, and I can see that when you submit your work. I'm going to show you how I would do it for this student's response. So let's just read through this again to remind ourselves. Suddenly, the mysterious fog arose and started wandering around. The fluffy white clouds turned to smoke grey as if a storm was about to brew. The lingering fog appeared as miasma waiting for its prey. At the same time, the silent wind rushed through the forest. The sturdy and ancient archway added to the uneasiness of the area. The open metallic gate made of steel. The withered trees overlooked the forest like its guardian. For a while, the man stared at the archway in awe and fear. Okay, let me grab my purple pen. Let me figure out how I would improve this. So instantly, I would probably just change smoky grey to like pewter grey. Just makes it seem a bit more advanced. Pewter grey. At the same time, the silent wind, instead of rushed, I'm going to do whistled. It's a nice sensory vocabulary to describe the sound of something. And the open metallic gate made of, I'm actually going to say made of serrated steel. It gives this idea of this gate as almost kind of like being like a weapon. And then again, you've got alliteration there with the S and the S. Do you know what? I think that's all I would do for this one. So as you can see in this one paragraph, I've added 3. So now if I was this student, I would go through and add 7 more to the rest of my response. And now it is your turn to do that. Add 5 pieces of sensory, 5 pieces of colour throughout your question 5 in purple pen. Pause the video and do that now. Okay, if you're back, that means you are ready to submit. Please make sure you submit to my email and have this as the subject. So it's English Lesson 2 and it's the 2nd of March today. Can you believe it's March already? It's insane. When you submit your work, you need to submit your work underneath today's date and title. And you also need to submit the pictures of your language paper 1 so I can see your additions of vocabulary. So I expect those 2 things to be in my email inbox. Pause the video, keep this screen on, submit your work. Once you've done that, you can X off and continue with your lessons. Have a great day, and I will speak to you in tomorrow's video.